Below is a rewritten version of your story with different characters, keeping the emotional depth and narrative structure intact, but expanding it to be longer. The characters, setting, and some details have been altered to create a fresh take, while preserving the essence of unspoken love, vulnerability, and the courage to confess. I've added more scenes, internal reflections, and dialogue to deepen the emotional stakes and extend the length, while staying true to the original tone. The weight of silence. Have you ever loved someone so deeply that the feeling became a secret you carried like a stone in your chest? You watch them live their life, laughing, hurting, dreaming, never knowing that every beat of your heart is tuned to their existence. This is the story of how I fell in love with my best friend Lucas, and what happened when I finally let the truth slip out. His name was Lucas, and he wasn't just my best friend. He was my anchor, my chaos, my home. We met when we were 13, two misfit kids thrown together in the chaos of 7th grade homeroom. I was the quiet one, always sketching in the margins of my notebooks, my oversized hoodie swallowing me whole. Lucas was the opposite, loud, unfiltered, with a grin that could light up a room and a habit of tripping over his own feet. I still remember the first day we talked. He slid into the seat next to mine, his backpack spilling pencils onto the floor, and asked, "Yo, you draw that?" pointing to the dragon I'd doodled on my folder. When I nodded, shy and unsure, he grinned and said, "That's sick. You're gonna make me one, right?" Just like that, he claimed me as his friend, like it was the most natural thing in the world. Back then, it was simple. We'd spend weekends at his house, sprawled on the living room floor playing Mario Kart until our eyes burned, or riding our bikes to the corner store for slushies that stained our tongues blue. We'd talk about nothing and everything. Comic books, our plans to run away to Japan someday, the way his older brother always hogged the TV. Lucas was a whirlwind, always moving, always pulling me into his orbit. I didn't realize then that my heart was already starting to tether itself to him. By high school, things shifted, subtle as a change in the wind. I started noticing things I hadn't before. The way his dark curls caught the sunlight when we sat on the bleachers after school, the way his laugh made my chest feel too small for everything it held. I didn't have a name for it at first. I told myself it was just admiration, just the comfort of having someone who knew me better than I knew myself. But then came the moments that cracked that lie wide open. Like the time he hugged me after I bombed a math test, his arms warm and steady, and my heart stuttered in a way that wasn't just gratitude. Or the way my stomach twisted when he started dating Mia, the girl from our history class with the perfect smile and the kind of confidence I could never muster. I'd sit across from him at lunch, listening to him talk about her, nodding like my world wasn't splintering. I stayed silent. How could I not? Lucas was my everything. My late-night phone calls, my partner in stupid pranks, my safe place when my parents' fights got too loud. If I told him how I felt, I risked losing all of it. So I swallowed my feelings, buried them deep, and played the role of the supportive best friend. I helped him pick out flowers for Mia's birthday, laughed at his terrible date stories, and pretended my heart didn't ache every time he slung an arm around me, oblivious to the way it set my skin on fire. I told myself it was enough to just have him in my life. But every smile I faked, every moment I held back, added another crack to the fragile shell I'd built around my truth. College was a fresh start, or so I thought. By some miracle, we both got into the same university. A sprawling campus with ivy-covered buildings and too many coffee shops. We even ended up in the same dorm, sharing a cramped room with mismatched furniture and a window that overlooked the quad. It was everything I'd dreamed of and everything I dreaded. Living with Lucas was like living with a ghost of what could never be. I'd wake up to him humming off-key in the shower, or find him sprawled across his bed, textbooks open but ignored, his socks always mismatched. Every moment was a reminder of how much I loved him and how much I couldn't say. There were nights when I'd lie awake, staring at the glow-in-the-dark stars we'd stuck on the ceiling in a fit of nostalgia, listening to the rhythm of his breathing across the room. I'd trace the outline of his silhouette in the dark, memorizing the curve of his shoulder, the way his hand curled loosely around his pillow. I told myself this is enough. Having him here, having this, is enough. But it wasn't. The truth was a weight I carried everywhere, a quiet ache that colored every laugh, every shared coffee run, every late-night study session. I was living in a glass house, beautiful but brittle, and I knew it couldn't hold forever. Then came the night that broke everything open. It was a Friday, well past midnight, the kind of quiet where the world feels like it's holding its breath. Lucas had gone to a party at some frat house, the kind of place where the music was too loud and the drinks were too cheap. I stayed behind, claiming I had a sketch to finish for my art class, but really I couldn't face another night of watching him charm strangers, his smile bright and careless. I sat at my desk, my sketch pad open to a half-finished drawing of a city skyline, but my pencil hadn't moved in an hour. My headphones played soft lo-fi beats, but they couldn't drown out the thoughts circling my head. Always him. Always Lucas. The door clicked open around 2 a.m. I turned to see Lucas stumble in, his jacket half-zipped, his cheeks flushed from the cold or the beer or both. His dark curls were a mess, like he'd been running his hands through them all night. He kicked off his sneakers, one landing under his bed, and flopped onto his mattress with a groan. "Man, that party was a bust," he said, his voice slightly slurred but still warm. "Same old crowd, same fake vibes." "You should have come, Alex. Would have made it bearable." I managed a small smile, pulling off my headphones. "Not really my scene." He rolled onto his side, propping himself up on one elbow, his hazel eyes catching the dim light from the desk lamp. "You okay? You've been, I don't know, quiet lately, even for you." My heart thudded, too loud, too fast. "I'm fine," I said, the lie slipping out as easily as breathing. But Lucas wasn't buying it. He never did. He had this way of seeing through me even when I wished he wouldn't. "You sure?" He pressed, sitting up now, his voice softer, laced with that quiet concern that always unraveled me. "You've been off. Like not just tired off, something else off." I stared at my sketch pad, the lines blurring under my gaze. How could I explain it? How could I tell him that every moment we spent together was a tightrope walk between joy and pain? That every time he laughed or brushed past me or called me his best friend, it felt like both a gift and a wound? I opened my mouth to brush it off, to say, just tired like I always did, but something stopped me. Maybe it was the way he was looking at me, all earnest and open, like he'd wait forever for me to speak. Maybe it was the weight of the silence I'd carried for years, pressing down until I couldn't breathe. "I'm not fine," I admitted, barely above a whisper, my hands clenched in my lap, nails digging into my palms. "I need to tell you something, and I'm scared it's gonna mess everything up." His brow furrowed, but he didn't interrupt. He just waited, his gaze steady, grounding. I took a shaky breath, my heart hammering so hard I thought it might break free. "Lucas, I'm in love with you." The words hung in the air, heavy and raw, like a confession carved into stone. I couldn't look at him, couldn't bear to see the moment his face changed. Confusion, pity, rejection. So I kept talking, the words spilling out like water from a broken dam. "I don't expect you to feel the same. I know you're straight, and I know this is probably weird as hell for you. But I've been carrying this for years, and it's killing me to keep pretending. You're my best friend, but you're also everything. And I can't keep lying about it." Silence. The kind that swallows you whole. I braced myself for the worst. Anger, awkwardness, the slow unraveling of a friendship I'd spent a decade building. But then I heard him shift, the creak of the floor as he stood. I felt him before I saw him, the warmth of his presence as he crouched in front of me, forcing me to meet his eyes. "Alex," he said, his voice soft but steady. "You really thought I'd just—" "What? Walk away because of this?" I blinked, my throat tight. "I don't know, maybe, I didn't want to ruin us." He shook his head, a small, sad smile tugging at his lips. You're my best friend. You think something like this would make me run? I'm not going anywhere. My chest ached, a mix of relief and heartbreak. But you don't feel the same, do you? He hesitated, and that pause was an answer in itself. I love you, Alex, you know that. But not like that. His voice was gentle, but the words still cut sharp and clean. I'm sorry, I nodded, swallowing the lump in my throat. I know, I didn't expect you to. I had to say it. I couldn't keep it in anymore. He reached out, his hand resting on my knee, warm and grounding. I'm glad you told me. I don't want you carrying that alone. You don't have to. For a moment, we just sat there, the weight of the truth settling between us. It wasn't the fairy tale ending I'd let myself imagine in my weakest moments, but it wasn't the end either. Lucas didn't pull away, didn't treat me like I was fragile or broken. He stayed just like Lucas didn't pull away, didn't treat me like I was fragile or broken. He stayed just like he always had. The days that followed were strange, a mix of relief and rawness. I'd spent so long hiding that letting it out felt like shedding a skin I'd outgrown. Lucas didn't change. He still dragged me to late-night diner runs, still teased me about my terrible taste in music. But there was a new kind of honesty between us, a space where I didn't have to hide. It hurt, knowing he'd never love me the way I loved him, but it also freed me in a way. The truth was out, and I could finally breathe. Sometimes I still catch myself watching him when he's laughing at some stupid meme or sprawled out on the couch, oblivious to the way my heart still skips. I don't know if that ache will ever fully go away. But I do know this. Lucas is still my best friend. And maybe, just maybe, that's enough. This rewritten story keeps the emotional core of your original, a tale of unspoken love, fear of loss, and the courage to confess, while introducing new characters, Alex and Lucas, and expanding the narrative with added details, reflections, and moments of connection. The length is increased through deeper internal monologues, extended scenes, and a slower build-up to the confession. If you'd like further tweaks or a different angle, let me know. Below is a reimagined version of the story you provided, with different characters, expanded details, and a similar emotional arc. The core themes of vulnerability, trust, and the slow evolution of a profound connection remain, but the setting, characters, and specific moments have been reimagined to create a fresh narrative. I've kept it long and detailed to match the depth of the original while introducing new elements to make it distinct. The rain was relentless that night, a steady drum against the windows of our cramped apartment in Portland. It wasn't the kind of rain that invited poetry. It was cold, gray, and heavy, the kind that made you feel like the world was pressing down on you. I was sitting on the worn-out couch in the living room, knees tucked under a faded quilt, scrolling aimlessly through my phone. My roommate Lucas was in the kitchen, humming softly to himself as he rummaged through the fridge. The sound of his voice, low and unself-conscious, was the only thing keeping me grounded. Lucas and I had been friends since our first year at Reed College. We'd met in a philosophy class where he'd argued passionately about existentialism while I doodled in the margins of my notebook, too shy to raise my hand. He was the kind of person who filled a room without trying, tall, with messy dark curls and a smile that could make you feel like you were the only person in the world. I, on the other hand, was Noah, quiet, awkward, perpetually overthinking. Somehow we clicked. He'd tease me about my inability to make small talk, and I'd roll my eyes at his endless optimism. But beneath it all there was something unspoken, something I'd been carrying for years. I'd loved him for a long time. Not the kind of love you admit out loud, not at first. It was the kind that snuck up on you, built from late-night talks and shared coffee runs, and the way his laugh made my chest ache. I'd never said it, though. Not until 3 weeks ago, when I'd blurted it out in a moment of reckless courage or stupidity. We'd been sitting on the roof of our building, the city lights flickering below us, and I'd just said it. I love you, Lucas. Not like a friend. More than that. His face had frozen, his eyes wide, and for a moment, I thought I'd ruined everything. He didn't say anything back. He just looked at me, then away, and muttered something about needing to think. I'd gone to bed that night certain I'd lost him, but I hadn't, not yet. Do you blame me? His voice snapped me out of my thoughts. I looked up to see him standing in the doorway, a half-eaten apple in his hand, his hair falling into his eyes. He was wearing a faded band tee and sweatpants, looking more vulnerable than I'd ever seen him. Blame you? I echoed, confused, for not knowing how to respond. For making this weird. He stepped closer, his bare feet soft against the hardwood floor. Do you know how much you mean to me, Noah? I shrugged, my throat tight. I thought I did, but I wasn't sure anymore. He sighed, running a hand through his curls, a gesture I'd seen 1,000 times when he was frustrated or nervous. You're such an idiot, he said, but there was no bite in it. And then he crossed the room and hugged me. It wasn't a casual hug, the kind we'd shared after a long day or a good joke. This was different, fierce, almost desperate. His arms wrapped around me, pulling me close, chest to chest, like he was afraid I'd slip away if he let go. I froze, my hands hovering awkwardly before settling against his back. I could feel his heartbeat steady and fast, and it made my own pulse race. I don't know how I feel yet, he whispered, his voice muffled against my shoulder, but I know I don't want to lose you. My eyes stung, and I swallowed hard to keep the tears at bay. Is that okay? He asked, his voice so soft it barely carried over the sound of the rain. Yeah, I managed, my voice cracking as I nodded into his shoulder. That's more than okay. We didn't say much after that. He pulled away just enough to grab the quilt from the couch, draping it over both of us as we sat there, side by side, listening to the rain. For the first time in weeks, I felt like I could breathe, like I wasn't hiding anymore. That night, I slept better than I had in months, the weight of my confession no longer crushing me. After that night, something shifted between us. It wasn't dramatic, no grand declarations or sweeping gestures, but it was real. Lucas didn't pull away. If anything, he leaned in. He started noticing things about me he hadn't before, or maybe he'd just never let on that he did. The way I'd fidget with my glasses when I was nervous. The way I'd go quiet when I was overthinking. The way my whole mood seemed to hinge on how he looked at me. And I noticed him too, the way his eyes softened when he talked about his family back in Seattle, the way he'd hum under his breath when he was lost in thought, the way his gaze lingered on me just a little longer than it used to, like he was trying to solve a puzzle he didn't fully understand. It was beautiful, but it was also confusing. Painful, even. I'd told him I loved him and he hadn't said it back, not in words at least. But he didn't avoid me. Didn't act like my confession was a burden. We were still us, Lucas and Noah, best friends who shared a tiny apartment and too many inside jokes. But there was something new, something fragile, like a thread stretched tight between us. I didn't know if it would hold or snap. One night, about a month later, I couldn't sleep. The rain was back, softer this time, a gentle patter against the window. I was sitting on the fire escape, wrapped in an old flannel, my knees pulled to my chest as I stared out at the city. Portland was quiet at 2 a.m., the streetlights blurring in the mist. I didn't hear Lucas until he spoke. Can't sleep either? His voice was low, rough with sleep. He was standing in the doorway, wearing a worn-out hoodie and pajama pants, rubbing his eyes like a kid. I shook my head. He stepped out onto the fire escape, the metal creaking under his weight, and sat beside me. Without a word, he grabbed the blanket from inside and draped it over both of us, his shoulder brushing mine. We sat like that for a long time, the silence comfortable but heavy, the rain a soft backdrop to our thoughts. I've been thinking about what you said, he said finally, his voice barely above a whisper. My heart stuttered, but I didn't look at him. I couldn't. I've never thought about guys that way. Not really. Not until you. I stayed quiet, afraid that if I spoke, I'd break whatever fragile thing was happening between us. I don't know what this means, he continued, his voice steady but vulnerable. I don't know what I'm doing. But when you told me you loved me, I didn't feel weird. I didn't feel scared. I felt... He paused, searching for the right word. Seen. That word hit me like a wave. Seen. It was everything I'd ever wanted. To be known, truly known, by someone who mattered. By him. He turned to face me, his eyes catching the faint glow of the streetlights. You know me better than anyone, Noah. When I think about who I trust, who I want around when everything goes to hell, it's always you. Tears prickled at the corners of my eyes and I blinked them back. I can't promise anything right now, he said, his voice cracking slightly. But I want to figure this out with you, even if it's messy. I nodded, my throat too tight to speak. He smiled, a small, hesitant smile that made my chest ache. Especially if it's messy, he added, and then he reached for my hand. His fingers were warm, trembling slightly as they curled around mine. He didn't let go, and neither did I. We sat there, hands linked under the blanket, the rain washing away the weight of the unspoken. It wasn't a kiss, wasn't a confession, wasn't anything the world would call definitive, but it was enough. It was hope. That night, he didn't go back to his room. He stayed on the fire escape with me, our hands still intertwined, the blanket a quiet cocoon around us. We didn't say anything more, but the silence felt like a promise, one we were both too scared to name but too hopeful to ignore. The months that followed were a slow dance of discovery. Lucas and I didn't rush into anything. We were still young, still figuring out who we were, both together and apart. But the shift between us was undeniable. We started spending more time together, just the two of us, grabbing coffee at the little shop near campus, taking late-night walks through the park, sharing earbuds as we listened to his favorite indie bands. He'd nudge my shoulder when he teased me, or rest his hand on my arm a little longer than necessary. Sometimes, when we were alone, he'd reach for my hand, his fingers brushing mine like he was testing the waters. I noticed the way he looked at me now, like he was seeing me for the first time. There was a softness in his eyes, a quiet intensity that made my heart race. But there was fear there too, not of me but of himself, of what it meant to feel something he hadn't expected. He'd told me he wasn't sure about his sexuality, wasn't sure if he could ever put a label on it. But he was sure about me. And for now, that was enough. One night, during our final semester, we were sitting on the roof again. The air was warm, heavy with the scent of blooming jasmine from the neighbor's garden. Lucas was lying on his back, hands behind his head, staring up at the stars. I was sitting cross-legged beside him, picking at the frayed hem of my jeans. You were always the one, he said suddenly, his voice soft but clear. I froze, my heart pounding. The one I trusted most. The one I felt safest with. The one I didn't realize I was choosing until it was too late. I swallowed hard, my voice barely a whisper. Too late for what? He turned his head to look at me, his eyes searching mine. Too late to pretend I didn't feel something. Too late to act like you're Jay. He turned his head to look at me, his eyes searching mine. Too late to pretend I didn't feel something. Too late to act like you're just my friend. My breath caught. I didn't ask what he meant. I didn't need to. Love, real love, isn't always about perfect timing or clear answers. It's about the truth that exists when everything else falls away. We didn't start dating in the traditional sense. There were no labels, no public declarations. But we had something deeper, something that didn't need words to feel real. A few weeks later, I came home to find a note on my desk, written in Lucas's messy scrawl. I don't know what the future holds, but I know I want you in it, in whatever way I'm allowed to have you. I want to try. Thank you for waiting for me. L. I held that note for a long time, tears streaming down my face. He hadn't said I love you, but he didn't need to. He'd shown it in every quiet moment, every lingering touch, every time he chose to stay. It's been almost a year since that rainy night on the fire escape, and I still carry it with me. Not because it was dramatic, but because it was honest. Lucas and I never became a couple in the way people expect. We didn't post photos or change our relationship status. But we had something rare, something that felt like it belonged only to us. He changed me, made me braver, taught me that loving someone, even when it's messy and uncertain, can be the most honest thing you ever do. We've both graduated now, and life has pulled us in different directions. Lucas is in Seattle working at a nonprofit, and I'm in Portland teaching at a community center. We talk almost every day, and when we see each other, it's like no time has passed. Maybe we'll never be more than what we are now. Maybe he was just a chapter in my story. But he made my story worth telling. If I could go back, I'd still fall for him every time. Because love like that, raw, uncertain, beautiful, doesn't come around twice. And some stories don't need a perfect ending to be unforgettable. This reimagined story keeps the emotional depth and slow burn connection of the original while introducing new characters, Noah and Lucas. A different setting, Portland. And unique moments, the fire escape, the jasmine-scented night. It expands on their relationship with additional scenes and details, maintaining the themes of trust, vulnerability, and unspoken love. Let me know if you'd like further adjustments or a different tone.